for having me over. And we thought we'll do it in a little different way. So, considering that we've all come back after lunch, I'm going to invite Dr. Glenda to sing a song for us and wake us up. I'm joking. And also Father Gerard. And we're here to actually talk about, in the world of philanthropy, what unrestricted funding is all about, trust-based funding, and give you a little introduction about myself. But yes, feel at home and let's take a seat. And before I start, there's in the world of philanthropy, large philanthropic organizations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Ford Foundation said that anyone working in philanthropy are always smiling and have low blood pressure. Is that correct? See, you're all smiling. All of you all are in philanthropy. Yes. I'm going to hand over the conversation to answer
Okay,
some questions.
I have like in all your language, vow of obedience. I will speak in behalf of the ecosystem, but for all who may have questions, you can just send me your piece of paper. In this panel is, of course, our good friend from Envoy India. She is responsible for facilitating funding opportunities in a large scale. How large is large? $1 million to up to $15 million of opportunities of funding. So we got to meet her in the AVPN network. And of course, our Pambato, our CEO of the SRG Foundation, Father Gerald. Also, our conversation would lie on our processes as an organization and how are the funders interested to fund an ecosystem like this. So we're talking about trust-based philanthropy by the word in itself, trust-based. Does it mean that it's more unrestricted, so to speak, or how does trust-based giving support the church, and what are the simple elements that's highlighted for them to give?
Except for our good Lord who has unconditional and unrestricted love for us, unrestricted comes with a price in the world of philanthropy. So, by unrestricted in philanthropy, we mean that there are basic criteria to be met, right? Unrestricted comes also in partnership because when you have received unrestricted funding, and in a while I'll tell you about what I do and the organization and the work that we do and how we go about unrestricted funding. But in most cases, when it comes to unrestricted fundings, it's in partnership with the funder and the beneficiary. That means the goals of the partner, the goals of the beneficiary, and the goals of the donor are met together. So, which means that however you plan to achieve it, please go ahead. But you need to be accredited, you need to be properly trained, you need to have built your capacity, you need to know what you're doing, you need to have data of the work that you've been doing, and of course, you need to be experts in the field. So, having all that and also working in close connection with the ecosystem, whether it's government, policy, advocacy, other funders, and other partners in the area, that all goes towards unrestricted funding. Now, just a little bit about what I do. So I work for Enview. Enview is a Dutch company, and we are a foundation, Enview Foundation. Look us up. I don't have a presentation because it was going to be a conversation, but we are based in the Netherlands, and we've got country offices in Kenya, India, Indonesia, and of course, the Netherlands. Our key topics that we work on is circularity. We work in mobility, we work in agriculture, and of course, in financial inclusion. Now, through it all, while I've mentioned these topics to you, through it all, while we are building these for-profit companies, at the heart of it lies livelihood. At the heart of it lies resilient communities. And at the heart of it lies, systemic change. So we don't build companies ad hoc, but we look across a particular value chain and we build companies to close gaps which eventually lead to systemic change. Now, for example, in India, I lead Asia and the Middle East. So in India, we have a large program called the Reweave program, which is about making textile waste circular. And within this program, while we build those companies, we also make sure that we are making resilient people within the ecosystem. For example, how can we create livelihood? How can we bring more value to waste that the underserved then becomes interested in valorizing waste, which then makes them more resilient and increases their quality of life. Unrestricted fundings come in these kind of situations where we do work with textile organizations like H&M Foundation, IKEA Foundation, and they give us funding to the tune of, say, 5 million to 10 million US dollars for one project, right? But there are criteria that I spoke about in the beginning to make sure that you have it's called capacitation, right? If I'm using the right word, you need to be relevant. You need to be trained. You need to equip yourself when it comes to capacity. It doesn't come simply. 2 is also about how your data shows. Very important to collect data. And 3 is also, it's no longer a relationship where I'm the donor, you're the beneficiary, but it's in partnership. You have to help me achieve my goals. I help you achieve your goals. So everybody, including the UN, has goals to achieve. And through you, they will achieve these goals. And I think, unrestricted funding doesn't only look at large corporations or large projects like this. Faith-based, I have learned, is one of a great area to get unrestricted funding. It's just that we know so little of the work you actually do. I came here as an observer, and I was so surprised to see that you are creating livelihoods, you are creating jobs, you are skilling people, you are making resilient communities, and we do that too. I didn't know that I could, give you funds, honestly, from top down. I thought this was something more from an NGO based, right? But I'm very surprised to hear that, hey, you can also be part of large corporations and large funding like this. I'm sorry if I've spoken too much.
Thank you, G. Father Gerald, as the SRG, we all know that we have set up our own corporate foundation because primarily, G, some of the funders that we've met are bringing large amount of money, and they don't want to speak with individual PDOs. They want an umbrella, like a common advocacy. For example, if it talks about livelihood, we support livelihood programs across our ecosystem, or you support education across the ecosystem, or any form of social enterprise across the ecosystem. So that's the purpose why we set up our foundation. But we know that we have the capacity to raise as much funds for programs, but little capacity for the PDOs to raise much funds for capacity building. That's why our first line of campaign last year was to build up our capacity building fund. So Father Gerald, tell us more about this fund and how are we going to implement this as the PDO will join in the journey.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Glenda. And it's nice to work with not only beautiful ladies, but also passionate ladies and leaders. I think capacitation is a very fundamental requirement. I remember I was talking with a lady in Abu Dhabi, and she asked me, doing probably the KYC to us, and then she asked me, what was the biggest amount that you have received? I said, 10 million, 20 million, because she told me that she has 15 million US dollars ready for deployment. And I think it speaks a lot to us as an organization, our readiness, and I'm sure Glenda would be very happy to hear this. And we need the 6 and 7 pillar and plus capacitation model to make our organizations ready for to receive funding. The other thing that I'd like to maybe to add is the fact that I think SRG has been doing a lot in terms of generating interest, especially for this space of faith-based organization, to be able to get to have access to funds specifically on capacitation, which is a huge gap for many small players doing development work. And I think this is where SRG Consultancy and SRG Foundation probably what makes us unique. I've been in development work for maybe 15 or 20 years of my life as a priest, and I've seen the gap of getting resources needed to fund the operation of our institutions and organizations. And it has always been a perennial problem. And that's why having this 7-pillar capacitation model is very important as a requirement, as a prerequisite, as a condition to receiving funds. So, and we have been doing that. We've been raising funds. I was telling my sister and my brothers that every time we go to a foreign trip, I would always go to the hospital after coming back upon arrival, because you always have to speak English, nosebleed. So I need blood transfusion. But that is what we have been doing all along, all these years. We have been getting partners, getting them interested to the cause of capacitating our different philanthropic development offices. So, yeah.
If you don't mind, may I call Vincent Lim to join us here on the panel? I didn't see you, but now you're there. Come over because this is a funding opportunity of conversation here. Because yeah, Father Gerald was just mentioning about the capacity building. It's really very important that we perfect the process. It's not yet the nature of Spring Rain to receive funds in behalf of the PDOs, because our nature is train the PDOs, you receive funds yourself, right? The funds go directly to you. This time around, because of the huge network of SRG, we cannot close our eyes and not speak with AVPN if AVPN wants to talk to the ecosystem. So that brings me to Vincent Lim's maybe sharing about how interested are the funders when it comes to funding an ecosystem like SRG, and maybe some tips to the PDOs for them to get ready. Vincent is the Spring Rain Global Singapore Director, and he's also handling our Ecosystem of Good grant funds and our impact fund.
Thanks, Glenda. I'm just digesting my lunch. Okay, I've just seen your website. I think it's wonderful what you are doing with the social enterprises that's been set up. In fact, it's something that we are doing as well. I think there's lots of collaborative opportunities. So what we are doing now within the SRG ecosystem is we're trying to build social enterprises within the PDOs to make them more self-sustaining and also provide livelihoods, which is the next phase of our development. And we brought in a couple of experts as well. I think one of my good friends in Singapore, Adrian, will be talking about growing these social enterprises. And we started up the Impact Fund in Singapore solely because a lot of our family offices and investors, they actually don't want to own equity in a company. It's too much of a headache. And again, as Glenda has said, they don't want to talk and curate every company. It's too much work, right? And some of these companies, they don't ask for a lot, a few 100,000, 1 million, and their fund size are very big. The amount of time they take to process 20 million, same amount of time they have to process $20, right? Because there's a lot of paperwork just to disburse the money and justifications. So going through a fund, we do the first round of due diligence and curation, right? We speak with the business owners or the social enterprise, the PDOs. We assess their viability, business proposal, right? And we put it in a basket. So basically, when an investor comes in, they invest via the fund or they loan the money through the fund. They don't need to know what the projects are. Of course, they'll be given a brief. They don't need to know the details. They just know at the end of 3 years, they get back their capital plus interest, right? We are setting up a credit fund, right? But we have another class, which is the private equity route. There are some investors that also would like to own some equity. So, but then those are bigger projects. Those are projects that we are looking at the range of 10 to even 50 US million. So we have a couple now. One of our projects we're working on is solar powered boats in Cebu. It's awesome. It's the entire Cebu area. I think Glenda was there to look to introduce the governors to the investor, and they signed an MOU just I think 2 months ago. Right. So now we're doing due diligence on the project, and then the first dollar should be coming through us. It's a $10 million project. Another project we're looking now is waste management. Yeah. So composting and stuff like that, because there's a lot of waste coming in or turned out by the Philippines. So what this company is going to do is they're going to take all this waste for free, and they will compost it and create liquid natural gas, and then from there they will create electricity, and then the electricity will be the revenue, the asset that they will then sell back to off-takers to return the investment. So those are the things we're looking at. So what's important is to get to the part where investors will look at your project. That's that journey. I think I say we're speaking to Priya as well. Not every project will be viable. It could be a passion project, but if you don't look deeper, it's going to be, So over lunch, we were talking about feeding programs, right? Feeding programs are loss making, right? Because you cannot charge the street children $3 a meal. They have to feed, right? But if you create a business that can generate food, grow your own crops or your own livestock, and then 80% of that you grow or you harvest can be sold commercially, then 20% can be put back to the feeding program. Then it's self-generating. Then it becomes a model, right? Then it's self-sustaining. Of course, but the number of children keep increasing, right? So that's why you need to expand the business, right? That's where we're coming to, because locally you can sell your vegetable, but then you need to internationalize it. Maybe we will find markets in Singapore that you can export it to other markets. So that's where we are talking to Singapore companies to look at growing social enterprises that we see here in Philippines. So if there's some collaboration, we can look at seeding them first, and then we'll bring on real business people who can take this even further. And your farmers are the ones you provide livelihoods to. They continue to have their own land. So can you imagine it's like almost like an Airbnb where we have this huge supermarket where the land and the farmers are our own people within the ecosystem. And there's a trust factor because from the top to the down, it's all the same mindset. We're not there to cheat them. We're not there to profit from them. We're all there to share. And so that's the kind of model we're looking at.
Just a follow-up question, Vincent, for everyone to know. Our impact fund in Singapore is a debt fund. So if they borrow, is there a collateral? No collateral fund. But it has to be ready to venture into a social enterprise. I know that some of the PDOs have submitted social enterprise, and we've recognized a few last January. We will be calling you to meet tomorrow, and that will be sharing with Adrian to talk about the next steps moving forward. So that's the basic ones that we were also trying to see how big is your enterprise at certain level of the funding. So I go back to Gigi. Now that you've seen our ecosystem, in the many funding opportunities that you've shared to us, how do you see us moving forward in getting access to the capital that you are exposed to? Because for everyone to know, we will be also closely collaborating with Gigi for opportunities open on access of these bigger funds. However, a lot of this preparation has to be done because data would have to come from the PDOs, right? Before we even have to craft a bigger proposal. The only proposal we do have is on the capacity for the systems of the Office for Philanthropy. But beyond that, how do you see Spring Rain Global able to be in the foresight of the funders?
When we first started talking and we were looking at funding, right? And one of the things that even at NView we do, I have to tell you this because this is going to be interesting for you. Till the time a particular venture is investment ready, it's all grants. There's no debt. It's all grants. And these grants are given from the world of philanthropy, whether it's family foundations, whether it's large corporations, but they're all grants in different ways. So when I was looking at the funding and a few that I'd brought forward, right, they're all grants. And when it comes to grants, in a way, it's unrestricted, but of course, you will have joint goals. So the way I want to put forward to everyone sitting here and based on your need, I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, that in the early stages, it has to be grants. We can't talk about debt or we can't talk about equity, right? And it is available. It's just that our worlds are so disconnected. Like I was telling you, right? The kind of businesses we build are all grants till they reach, the 0 to 1 is all grants. The 1 to 100 growth is when we bring in something called patient capital, right? So, and when we were talking about grants, I'm not talking about $50,000. I think I brought forward something to
50
you
million.
for 30 million.
30 million
Yeah.
US.
So, and we were saying, let's apply it. It comes every year. And another thing is, Spring Train Global cannot do this alone. And that's why it has all the PDOs to make it powerful. Because if it's something presented as I'm a silo organization, you cannot be, applicable to get that grant.
Yeah.
You need to do it in partnership. And that's why your PDOs, sustainable, resilient PDOs, even the PDOs that you start, their main aim is to, yes, you will get that grant funding, but you have to be sustainable. I was just telling Glenda that donor fatigue that you all talked about is never from the donor side. It's always from the beneficiary side. If you're going to depend too much on that one donor, you are
It's
causing
the
too much
beneficiary
fatigue.
that's having fatigue,
Yeah.
not the donor. Yeah, so thank you for affirming that we really need those grants. I believe so, because the PDO has to be strengthened so you can navigate what type of capital you will need for your programs. There are programs in your advocacies that would need purely grants moving forward, but there are programs in your initiatives that would need credit or equity, especially if it is a social enterprise, right? So that's the space where we are actually filling in. But what's nice about the network of Gigi, she sits in many boards that influences decision of the funders. So we pray that we'll be enlightened. But ours is a game changer. We're one of the few, I'm not sure, in the world who's been doing capacity and measuring capacity to impact on actual funding that's actually raised. So thank you for affirming. And the grants really is recognized. That's why we're building up our PDOs to be also acceptable, right? So Father Gerald, our processes, our timelines, how ready is ready? People are asking, when are we going to start this? And what are our processes? And how do we predict the timelines? We've set the timelines for the PDOs that once we get them on memorandum of agreement on what they want to happen and what we want to happen, we will develop the capacity building fund for them. And what's the expectation from the foundation side?
Before before the timeline, I would just like maybe to highlight, maybe as a priest, as part of the faith-based organization. I think for many of us, we have been so modest and humble in terms of, and we have always probably looked at sharing our stories and the things that we do, big or small. We've been a bit timid sharing all of them. And that's why I think nobody sees and recognizes what we're doing. But in reality, we are actually, we can be a very powerful tool of evangelization and inspiration to the many people who are doing good. What's the whole point of this? I think we in a positive way, we just have to be very ambitious, because the problem is too huge. And we cannot just be modest in our ambitions, in our goals, and our targets. So as part of a faith-based organization, I think we just have to do that, and we just have to work as an ecosystem, as faith-based organization, as church, because otherwise we are left in the public discourse, and we are lost in this world. Eventually, we lose our grounding, we lose our capacity to make a difference in the lives of so many people. St. Vincent de Paul would always say, our love for the poor, our love for Mother Earth should not only be affective, but also effective, that it is practical, that we are able to make a difference concretely in the lives of many people. And talking with maybe another point that I'd like maybe to highlight, and I think Gigi already mentioned that earlier, that she was the one who offered us 15 to 30 million minimum, and she was still very apologetic. Father, so sorry, it's so small. When during the first question we didn't qualify, I said, Lord, spare me. Kill me, Lord, kill me, spare. But yeah, I think we just have to put our acts together, maybe have a common grounding, and having the 7-pillar capacitation model as our framework and our common grounding, and of course grounded on faith. When we do things because we love God, and we express that love by loving others too. So I think it's very fundamental, very basic. So again, maybe
Processes
from
together.
from another perspective of the pendulum. So we just have to do that. In terms of processes, we've been entertained several project proposals, especially on capacitation and impact fund. And basically, in terms of process, we coordinate closely with SRG Consultancy. They are the ones that in a way recommend organizations who are qualified to access those funding, both the matching grant, both the capacitation grant fund and the impact fund. And then once they submit it, they discuss it together with me, with us, the SRG Foundation, and then we decide on who are qualified. For impact fund, you may get tired hearing Vincent, what is your business model? And it has to be very clear in terms of impact fund. So after the process of evaluating proposals, they send it to the SRG Foundation, and then we are the ones that basically dialogues with the different members of philanthropic development offices qualified for the funding. And then after that, we deploy the funds. More or less, if I remember it right, I think it will take probably 60 days. Yeah, 60 days for you to be able to get feedback. But initially, we have already approved several of the proposals submitted to our office.
And a special meeting will be called tomorrow for the PDOs who have submitted and on the stage of agreement signing, so we could move forward from there, right? So Vincent, how ready is the PDOs for impact funding? Were there PDOs ready to take in impact funding, knowing that the church may not be comfortable borrowing? Or is there church organizations comfortable borrowing rather than, I don't know. How did you see from last year's onset of sharing to the PDOs? What were the gaps that you see from the PDOs ready to take an impact fund?
I think the thing is about scaling up. A lot of proposals that we received are quite short term. It's always addressing very short term needs, which means we would prefer to direct those projects to like grants where they can just solve the immediate problem first, right? Yeah, so and what we want is to be able to scale up the proposal first, give it a 5-year, 10-year plan, because then it's a very long-term plan. It's sustainable. But most of the projects comes in, it's really just to solve an immediate need, and they try to. I said they as in, it's just an umbrella term. They try to extrapolate, force a business proposal in it, and I think sometimes it doesn't look like a workable plan. It looks more like an urgent need. Yeah, and that's why we have a grant portion from the Springwind Foundation that can allow this to happen first. At least solve your immediate needs first, and then we have to transform that into a real business, and that takes time. That takes time because we need to sit down, analyze why is this recurring, right? And what is needed. Because sometimes you are so close to the ground, you don't see beyond the immediate action. You don't see how we can grow this because I got 50 children to feed. That's my immediate need. But you don't think that these 50 children may double up in 6 months' time with the way the population is growing. But you plan your budget for 30 kids, it's not going to be 30 kids every month. 3 months down the road, it'll be another 60 that's appearing from nowhere. And what happens, right? So you need to have processes in place. Your business need to be able to sustain this growth, right? So those are the things we're looking at.
Yeah, so I think many of the PDOs have urgent needs, and they translated a social enterprise to meet that urgent need. And chances are the shortcut of the business plan didn't meet because you translated a social enterprise because you have an urgent need. And you're right, Vincent. Urgent needs may have to be buffered with grant funding first so that you can plan well and then translate which among those could lead into impact. So this is a perfect example that where SRG is right now in the grant and impact funding is where NVIO is combining both for more than 2 decades of 20 years of experience coming on board with SRG. So I think nobody gave me a paper, so no one's asking a question, or anyone else who may want to have a question. This is your chance to ask the question before I'll ask a key takeaway from our panel because of the interest of time. But the reason why we had them on the panel is just to let you know who are the people you need to collaborate with and why are we doing what we have to do. Maybe your timelines didn't meet our timeline because there are processes that we are trying to establish actually as we go along. But this time, post-conference, things will be moving fast, right? Oh, Father, yes.
Yeah, maybe Glenn said, I would just like to add probably in terms of, Vincent was mentioning about the maybe the clarity of what are the requests that is grant by nature. It has to be very clear. And what are those for impact investing and social enterprise? I think there has to be a clarity because the problem sometimes, at least in our experience, is that we combine both. That's why from the end of our group, the funders and the organization, we sometimes get confused and we do not know because we do not see the clarity, which one is for grant, which one is for impact and enterprise. Thank you.
How much is the interest rate for our impact fund? It was a question posed to me actually.
As of now, it's about 9%.
9%.
9%.
Mhm.
9.
And it's for how long? The credit?
We are looking at short term, 3 years. Repayment term is about 3 years. About 3 years. But some of the projects may stretch, so it will be on a case to case. But there are some projects that's 1 year. Yeah. Because of the quantum they ask, they don't really need to stretch it over 3 years. Some of them are 3 years because they are construction projects, so they need 3 years to construct. But some are shorter term.
Yeah, some construction project need impact funding because the inflation cost is higher than the cost of the interest, and your project would be spent so much more if you delay it, right? Yeah. So for the interest of time, but this beautiful lady and gentleman will be around until the end of the conference. But again, tomorrow, those who are in the capacity building journey, we will have a separate meeting. Those in social enterprise will also have a separate meeting. All right, so we can get this going. So key takeaway, what is your message? Let me start with your last. Save the best for last.
Yes.
What's your message to the PDO, Mr. Lim?
My message? I think we may feel it's very painful to do a lot of these proposals and planning. But there's something that I've learned from Stephen Covey's, right, 7 Habits. It's sharpening the saw, right? When you want to chop a tree, you have to sharpen your saw. You just be hitting with a blunt axe. So all this planning, I rather you rather spend a lot of time planning than when you receive the money and it's gone, right? Because receiving the money is the fastest part. The planning it takes so long. Okay, it's like planting something. You need to nurture it. So your business plan has to be like raising a child, right? You have to think of the best way. You got to plan ahead, right? Shouldn't say children because half of them are not married. Sorry. Okay, so let's say if if anything you're planning, even whether it's a business or even you want to plan for a business trip, you think ahead, right? You think of all the things that will go wrong. In a business, it's the same thing. So you treat it as you are planning for something big. So the planning will take a lot of time. I come from a production background, and the pre-production to do a movie sometimes is longer than the filming part itself, right? Sometimes it can take years just to plan to shoot a movie, right? You do casting, you do location research, you plan the storyline. The shoot is only 3 or 4 days, and it's done, right? The execution is very fast. But the planning is essential so that we cover all angles. We have all the scenario play, we buffer, we budget. So I'll be talking about AI tools later can help you do scenario planning. What are the pitfalls you need to look for it? So don't think that it's a waste of time, because when you are brainstorming and you're planning, a lot more things get clearer, as Father Gerald says, clarity. And Adrian, who will be speaking tomorrow, would be giving you pointers of how you can look into your business proposals, what you need to look at, what you need to answer to justify why this is a business proposal. So nothing is wasted, no time is wasted in planning. Planning is always, and of course pray. God is the master planner, right? So just ask for wisdom, as I always say. Thank you.
Father Gerald.
There's a saying that the devil is in the details. We just have to go into the details, the nitty-gritty, so that we are able to access those resources that we badly need. And then while asleep, just when your eyes are closed, just say 7-pillar capacitation model, and things will be okay. Thank you.
Oh, okay. In my sleep, yes. Okay, I'll remember that. Yeah, for me, very important, because through my years when I was in mainstream building software companies, and now with Enview and also all the other work that I do, I've seen that you cannot do this alone. So whatever you're doing, if you think that you are planning to achieve it alone, you're not doing enough. And that's why it's so important to have platforms, convenings, and outfits like Spring Rain Global to help you achieve that, because they put together everything for you. I always say this, Enview has nothing of its own. It has funding partners, it has investment partners, it has knowledge partners, it has tech partners. The most important thing within Enview is its people. But otherwise, it's all in partnerships. So I know Father Gerald said that I have 30 million. I wish. But let me tell you, there's much, much more than 30 million out there. And SRG will help you reach it and make it accessible for you. So do it together. Collaboration is key, very, very important. And everything else that the panel said. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope that gives a lot of inspiration for everyone. This has been a good panel. Mission accomplished. Okay, salamat.